The Selden's Landing Elementary School, you have with a capacity of 908, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And that's with, just to clarify, that's with a traditional calendar, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if we opened up the possibility of doing a track-type year-round school at Selden's Landing, what would the capacity then be, assuming about a 25% additional capacity?
Well, again, at 900, you're probably looking at, if you want to assume a 25% capacity, probably somewhere in the order of maybe 150 to 175 seats, depending on the programs and how they might be reassigned to the school.
So you could have, let's say, 1,135, if my math is correct, a capacity of 1,135 without any more overcrowding than what your suggested capacity is. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. But I think you'd also have to consider with an extended calendar, you might be looking at the extension of transportation services as well as extended contracts to many of the personnel. So we don't really know what those costs would be. Obviously,
there are different costs associated with a year-round program, and I think those are things that we have looked into, and as I'm sure you're aware, one of the things that the Government Reform Commission recommended as they looked at Loudoun County schools was to consider the possibility of a year-round program at some of our schools. And since this is an area of the county that is, we do have some overcrowding issues, it seems like it would make sense to at least consider the possibility of a year-round program at a school like Selden's Landing if there was community buy-in. Wouldn't that make sense?
I think that would really be all dependent on board direction, not for staff.
Sure. Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. But I'm just trying to clarify that we would have enough space for all of Lansdowne to stay at Selden's Landing, possibly in perpetuity, right, if we switched to a year-round schedule.
I don't know that I'd use those words, but
well, as long as they kept the year-round schedule, correct? Because we don't see any other places. I mean, unless they took Leisure World and suddenly decided to make it into traditional, traditional family housing. There's not really any other places where we're anticipating growth in that area, are we?
Again, I mean, if you would look at what we're seeing today, we have several areas along the Greenway, which are commercial and industrial zones, that are being actually now we are seeing applications for rezoning to convert that into residential. I mean, there's nothing to prevent areas up in that the Lansdowne area from being converted. That's all I want to say and can say.
That makes sense. It's certainly not impossible that somehow something could be converted and rezoned, and I understand that. And you're not you've left your crystal ball at home, and I appreciate that. If in addition to converting to year-round, obviously there's some folks where a year-round schedule would not be ideal. If we made a traditional school calendar, a school with a traditional calendar as an option for those residents, let's say Stuart Weller, for the people who really needed a traditional calendar, that would possibly free up even more space, wouldn't it, for those people who wanted to attend a traditional school rather than if we had a year-round calendar at
I think what it might get us into that we'd really, I mean, at the direction of the board, we'd really have to do some additional investigation is whether you'd be increasing transportation significantly or what the transportation implications would be, what the implications would be on the future of Stuart Weller, And frankly, if you were going to move to a multi-track year-round school in order to increase capacity, you'd want to have other kids come to that school to in fact inflate that capacity. Otherwise, you'd be sitting there with a multi-track year-round school that doesn't have any more kids in it than it has if you move some children out.
Right, and just looking at the map here, I see that there's a DN 1.1 that is in fairly close proximity to Selden's Landing, isn't it?
Yes, sir. That's part of the Lansdowne development that was moved out in '07.
Right. So it's at least conceivable that if we went to a year-round schedule and we made Stuart Weller available to those folks who were looking for a traditional calendar, but the people who wanted sort of the more, innovative year-round schedule and wanted to stay at their neighborhood school, we might even be able to open that up to 1.1 as well, keeping the entire Lansdowne community at Selden's Landing.
Well, I think if I'm following Dr. Hattrick's logic, in order to maximize the year-round potential, you'd want to expand that even beyond Lansdowne.
Well, if we didn't have any, if we weren't able to fill it up enough with the Lansdowne community, sure. I think we would have to, it would be important to gauge interest of the Lansdowne community and find out, what type of percentage would be interested in, in trying a year-round, less traditional schedule, so that, number one, because of its educational benefits, and number two, because all of Lansdowne would be able to remain there at Selden's Landing.
And I just think, from the board's perspective, we really would need some direction from the board to commission a study, because when we did year-round school, as I've told you before, and depending on which track you're on, it's either very popular or not so popular. And I think a couple of things the board would have to do is you'd have to identify in the Lansdowne community what the zones were going to be, because you do neighborhoods together to form a track so the transportation is efficient.
That's not necessarily the way that it's done.
No, you can, if you're willing to provide double busing, come into an area every time I'm just saying, to get the maximum efficiency, the standard plan is to do that. Right. Our experience was people wanted to know before we went into year-round school, okay, where will I be in this plan? Am I one of the people who will start school the first day of September and go for 45 days and then be off? Am I one of the people who will start school in September, go for 3 weeks, and then be off for 3 weeks, et cetera?
And I don't want to
I'm just looking for board direction.
Sure. And I don't want to wade too far into the weeds on the concept of year-round school, because I believe there's some other sort of innovative things that we can do in conjunction with year-round school and let people actually choose their own track. And you can do things like, have different types of programs available in different tracks, and then have people choose their own track rather than simply assigning people to a track. Leave that choice with the parents. And I think you'll have a much higher level of satisfaction when people are choosing their own track as opposed to simply being forced into a track. Is it less efficient when it comes to busing? Probably. But certainly I think the upside outweighs the downside there.
Thank you, Mr. Fox. I think that's an intriguing idea to increase capacity in a school that clearly a lot of people want to remain in. But I think we would have to do a lot of outreach to the community to find out, what their interest was in that as a solution.
And it's funny you mentioned that. I just happened to be in communication with the nonpartisan, nonprofit group Educate Loudoun, who is also very interested in year-round school, and they offered to do an informational session with me in Selden's, the Lansdowne community, to give folks more information about what a year-round program would look like, and gauge community interest in that type of a program. So, Mr. Hornberger, since that is in your area, I would actually love to co-host that informational session with you, if you'd be amenable to that.
Oh, great. We can talk about that offline. Other questions, Mr.